had a moment last year where something just kind of snapped in me. It was conditioning, I think. The conditioning snapped. Like the most fundamental ways that I knew myself, that I've always known myself in the world. And, you know, just this, something just came out of me that I want to see myself clearly, completely clearly, like I'm ready. It was like a deep earnestness that just rose to the surface, and ironically, the process of seeing myself clearly has revealed that there is no self to be found. That there is nothing and no one there, here. So initially there was like this deep emptiness, which was really uncomfortable. You know, as all that fundamental conditioning just snapped and broke. It was really uncomfortable. There was a lot of repressed stuff that just kind of came to the surface and spewed out because there was nothing holding it back anymore. There were all the, you know, the dams and the valves just kind of got ripped open, torn open. And it was just like this emptying process. And I had been through an emptying process before that. It's just a little bit of a different nature. So what that inquiry, just like, I want to know, I want to see myself clearly. I guess that's another way of saying, who am I? Revealed emptiness, which was very disturbing initially. Very disturbing, and just like, I guess this year for me is, you know, it's kind of just like, it was simultaneously like a really deep freedom, like deeper and deeper layers of freedom being revealed, or just, just freedom being revealed in bigger and bigger, deeper and deeper ways. But also, you know, side by side with that, it was just like an internal, just like flail. Just total flail. Of just like trying to find any orientation, you know, and not being able to. Trying to grasp something and there being nothing there to grasp. I'm gonna scooch out of the sun a little bit. Hi, sweet pea. So lately, I feel like I was kind of, you know, towing around this for a little while, you know, walking up to this like threshold and then retreating, or there was just more and more subtle levels of emptying that needed to happen. But eventually it was just what was, you know, after all those coping mechanisms got ripped away, and, you know, after that emptiness kind of became pervasive, you know, like that became the, I guess like in a weird way, the only thing that could be oriented to was the, like how empty this was, how empty everything was. And then, and so when there became nothing left to grasp at, like all that was left was just this this sensation inside of just like this running. That's what it felt like. Fear. But just this running. And you know, just here recently how that just all of a sudden it was just like my whole system just went kind of bananas and haywire, and the whole nervous system was just on alert, just really uncomfortable. And it felt like just this internal, just final flail of just trying to grasp at anything, but then it's like everywhere that was turned, there's nothing to grasp at, there's nothing to hold to. And what I realized was that fear, that like existential fear, what I realized is that's what it was. Like, you know, somehow life graced upon me a wonderful therapist who, it just so happens that his sense of self has dropped away, and it took me a little while of working with him to realize that that was the case through, you know, just little conversations here and there. And I think it took him a little while of working with me to realize, you know, what was actually transpiring on this end of things. And so I just feel so grateful for that, so fortunate to have that mirror, that person to hold that space. And so there was just like this internal flail recently, and just like my whole system was on alert. There were just thoughts racing all of a sudden, which like you don't, like I didn't realize how empty this had become until all of a sudden there was just racing thoughts, and it's just like, holy shit. It's like a lot. Bee. My videos are little bee magnets lately. So I had a session with him, and what I realized is that like my whole system, like all the alarm bells were going off. I couldn't sit still. It was just like doing. Like my body couldn't sit still, or it felt like it couldn't sit still. And it was just like what felt kind of like a little firing up, or maybe like one last little hurrah of like a personal will, what I could call a personal will of just like running, energy of running away, avoiding that fear, that fear. And you know, as I made an appointment with my therapist, and we kind of like faced it, or he sat with me while I faced it. And really what that was is just like this existential terror of non-existence, of no self. I've been like the last couple of months just like really drawn all of a sudden to Bernadette Roberts' work, her books on no self. And through exploring that and reading those, there's something just clicked. And there was actually like a realizing here of what that actually meant for self to drop. And it was a little disturbing, honestly. A little disturbing initially. And so that flail was just, what I realized was there, what has always been here. You know, that energy of just fear that ran everything. Like that is the will, that is the personal will, that is the person. That's what motivates everything. That's what moves everything. But when all of those, you know, like coping mechanisms and thoughts and beliefs weren't there, it's like there was nothing for that energy to try to attach to, or say, and no way to distract from it. And so I faced it. And it was really, really uncomfortable. really uncomfortable, number one, but what that gave way to was, I can't even speak it. But there is and it's been something that I've had to, that energy has kind of fired up a handful of times, and every time it does, there's just a sit, face it, don't move, don't look away. Not to get rid of it, but just to feel it completely, to feel that fear completely, because everything just wants to be felt. Everything just wants to be felt. So feeling that completely. And then what that gave way to was the truth. There's no longer a question here of what I am. And even those words don't capture it because there's no I there. It's beyond or before that. I guess the closest word, there's words that I could use to describe it. The infinite, because it's potential. Peace, freedom, love. Love is a tricky way to describe it because it's not the way that I used to think, not the concept that I used to have of love. Like there's no longer a question of like what I am. No question. But it's before the concept of I ever existed, before that thought ever came forth. Before this body, before sounds, before colors, before any of it. But the only way, and it's so obvious now, but the only way that I could find that, to discover that, was to literally see all the things that I wasn't, to realize everything that I wasn't. And only through that can the discovery of what you really are occur. Wholeness, it's peace, it's freedom. It's before words. Words aren't it. Because words, I guess in one way they are it, but words come from it. So how could they describe it? Words are an expression of it, but they're not it. The colors are an expression of it, but they're not it. Sensations are an expression of it, but they're not it. And I really clearly understand now people that say it's nothing, no thing, appearing as everything. It truly is. And the strange part is that you can't seek after something that you don't intimately know. And I see that really clearly now. It's just all, that peace and freedom, what you are, for lack of a better way of saying that, I don't know how to say that. It's just like veiled by layers. It's just layers built over that, obscuring it. But we seek for peace and freedom, whatever you'd like to call it. But how can you look for something if you don't already know it? You wouldn't know to look for it if you didn't know it intimately. It's the most intimate knowing that there could possibly be, that there could ever be. It's the most intimate knowing. The thing that is most deeply known. And so for me, how that manifested, you know, and seeing that was like it was like a tracing back from form to formlessness, like a stepping back, and the way that came through was like I guess you could call it a vision, or I don't even know what I would call it, but initially it was tracing back the sound of my own heartbeat until it got to the place where it started. And in that place, you can't call it a place, all there is knowing, but there's not a knowing of anything. It's before the word heartbeat, it's before sound, it's before the knowing of a heartbeat, but it's that completeness, that wholeness, like before body, before Jennifer, before anything. And in that place, it's just potential, because it could have become a dog, could have become a tree, could have become a bee. All these bees that keep attacking my cameras lately. Could have become any of that. Luna's getting a visit from the mail lady right now. Getting some loving. And then I've sat, you know, there have been a few other times where that little internal flail has come up and there's a meeting it. And for some reason here, it just seems to always go back to, I can't call it a place, always go back to that. And just this knowing of like, that's wholeness, that's completeness, that's love. That's what you really are. It's the most intimate knowing that you have. There's no separation, no self, pure potential. And then all this appears from it, as it. As layers, you know, layers over that. So it's still, you know, I can't say that there's any sort of, it's funny, I've just been talking about completeness. I can't, in a more relative sense, I can't say there's like a completeness here, because it seems like there's still that little, like, you know, the fear just kind of popping up, and then moments of facing it, feeling it, meeting it, stopping. I understand now too what Gangaji talks about, just stop, all of it, everything. For me, that stopping could only happen when everything else had been stripped away. I don't know. I've like gotten to a point where the mind, like, it keeps trying to grasp for like what is, you know, I feel it, you know, like what stage is this? Where am I? Is this self? Is this? Is this? But there's nothing to grasp at anymore. It's just like this little flail, and just knowing that it's just a flail. Like all of that stuff is just thoughts. It's just thoughts. It's like the distraction mechanism from facing the truth, facing like what is, from meeting it. Oh, did you bite a stink bug? That must have been yucky. I was chewing on a leaf and accidentally bit a stink bug. And then kind of freaked out and went, bleh. So it's weird. It's just weird, the seeking. Because it, like, there couldn't be the seeking if you didn't already know intimately. If you didn't have an intimate experience or knowing, can't even say it's an experience, if you didn't have an intimate knowing of like what it was you were seeking. So it's such a strange little paradox. But I guess like the essence, like the truth of what you are is peace. It's freedom. It is freedom. And you already know it. But it's not enough for me to say that. You have to figure it out for yourself and remember for yourself. And at least for me, that required stripping away of everything else. Everything that I wasn't. But I'll leave you with and then just something adorable, Luna playing with a stink bug. Let's see what happens here. Yep. It's this too. Peace and freedom. That's what's happening here. Luna battles the stink bug.